So today is day 7 out of my 31-day content creation challenge, and 7 means a lot to me. First of all, I'm the 7th born in my family. That is usually something that blows people's mind. Yes, I have a very big family. And I believe 7 to also be a lucky number because I have a very lucky person in my life who is Daniel Ampafo. I call him my best friend, my brother, and everybody in Ghana knows him as the grandfather of graphic design. He's pioneering a lot of innovation, a lot of leadership, and also really inspiring a lot of people to understand that design can be not only a profitable career, but a sustainable form of investment for the country, for employment, and for everything else you can think of. Today's conversation, I think this is more like a deja vu.
Yeah.
Because 5 years ago, it was you and I inside my hostel with very little to show. I think the only thing that was clear was the passion that we had for the career.
And the fact that we knew we would make it.
Exactly. Well, you knew we would make it. I've always been the pessimistic person between the two of us.
Yeah.
You've always been the very optimistic person out of the two. Because whenever anything goes wrong, whenever the dollar price would go up, I'll be complaining and you would come back and say, Charlie, relax, it will be. You've always held that positivity. Yeah. And if anybody knows Daniel very well, Daniel has these 4 words he always says under anything that is aspirational. He always says, higher and higher we go. And it's everywhere. It's been there since the very beginning.
Yeah.
Tell me, why and how are you so optimistic about everything?
And I mean, I'll use this as an example, right? Look at where we are shooting today, right? This is like a really beautiful place. When we compare what we had 5 years ago to the kind of set we are shooting, the kind of equipment we're using, it's a good example of the fact that, I mean, if we keep doing what we're doing and we keep doing it well, it will take us where we want to go to. And for me, I've always believed in that drive that once we are putting in the work, and we have been putting in the work, once we are putting in the work, it will only get better. And so that's why for me, I always believe that we can only go higher from where we have started or from where we are, you know.
I believe that. Okay, so in order not to make this a bit confusing for everybody watching, I'm going to sort of walk you through exactly what we're going to do. Ghana is in a very difficult place right now. A lot of people are complaining. So when I had the idea to do this video, the only topic that I thought would be very relevant was to ask Daniel one simple question. And the question is, if you were to start your design career all over again from scratch, what would you do differently?
It's a very interesting question. And it's funny and it's so timely at this time, right, that we're doing this because I only celebrated my 30th birthday yesterday, right? And so because of that, this entire week really, I had been thinking of, and I have an article that I was going to write. I'm sure by the time this video is out, that article is probably out as well, about the things that I have learned for the 30 short years that I have lived on Earth, right? And this week I had just been thinking, put so many things into perspective for me about the journey that I have been on, and how far I have gotten to, and what the next, say, 10 years looks like for me, right? And in so many ways or faculties, I think about the different components or elements of what I'm doing in terms of success. And I watched a video a couple of weeks back. Manifest was in a presentation, and he was talking about something, and he talked about commercial success, creative success, and creative success, and cultural success. Right? These 3 things became like the benchmark for measuring what I have been able to do so far, and how it started. When it started, was I thinking about the cultural success? Was I thinking about my creative success? And was I thinking about my commercial success, right? And these 3 things really, really make a difference in how I would have started my journey back then, right? And so I'm hoping that this conversation will bring forth most of these things that I have been thinking about, and then we get to enjoy these lessons.
Well, I mean, definitely, you talking about these three pillars, I think they are quite profound, and I would love for us to dive into it. So throughout this conversation, we're going to be touching on very important things. We're going to be talking about soft skills. We're going to be talking about hard skills. We're going to be talking about finances, sustainability, finding a niche, or rather finding a way you can stand out of the crowd. I mean, a lot of people are beginning to look into the creative industry as a source of making money right now, because the white collar jobs and the blue collar jobs did not serve a lot of people well after uni. So you have a lot of people who are jumping into photography, into filmmaking, and so on. So again, we go back to the very initial question. You are starting your career all over again. Where do you start from?
I think, and I may not do so many things differently, but one of the things that if I was starting all over again, I would do a bit more of is exploration, right? And for me, it has become like one of the biggest things I tell almost every creative that I mentor or I speak to is exploring. Don't just jump and say, I want to be a brand designer or an identity designer. And for me, I was one of those people who explored. I mean, I did photography back in the day. You would remember very, very well. Traveling to some deep villages in Kumasi, doing photography, moved from photography to video. I also did video. We shot weddings. Those days where we were misplacing memory cards and losing footages and stuff like that, right? And did videos, did photography, did UI UX back then, even when it wasn't really a big deal back in uni. And
don't forget your PowerPoint book design.
Exactly. Yes. And I used to do book. Yes, I used to do book design. I used to do PowerPoint designs. And I'll talk more about this PowerPoint thing because it's a very strong pillar in even how far I've come into. But I'll say that exploring, right, I'll say is the biggest thing that I think that I would do more of, right? I probably will explore other design disciplines just to see how I do. I think the only thing that currently I don't know how to do is motion design, right? But I think that then I'll explore that a bit more because it was one of the things I wanted to try, but at the point I realized that no, I had reached where I wanted to narrow or focus, right? But exploration is like number one on my list of things that I would have done differently. Explore beyond what I already did. Spent more time digging deeper into all of these various skill sets that I acquired along my journey as a creative.
Well, it's interesting that you're talking about because today I made a tweet. I don't know if you saw it. I made a tweet today that read that we are in our youthful years, and unfortunately we are wasting those youthful years because of a bad system or bad economic condition that we're in. This is the time where we're supposed to make mistakes, explore and have fun.
Yes.
But try make we see. So it's interesting how you're here saying that one thing you would have done differently is to explore. Today, can the average aspiring creative explore? I mean, looking at everything that's going on around us, do you really have the capacity to actually explore and be able to not have to worry about making certain mistakes?
Yeah. I'll say that, so the earlier the better, right? And one of the things that I mostly tell people around me is that now we're in 2023, right? No matter what, in 5 years' time, we'll be in 2028. Now, between 2023 and 2028, if you don't do anything, if you don't die, he's probably agreeing with me. If you don't die, you'll see 2028, right? Which means that you definitely have to do some level of work to get to 2028 if you want to see a difference in who you are and in your skill, right? And so, even though it feels like you're running out of time, I actually think that in a country like Ghana or in a space like Ghana, it's actually where you really need to do a lot of exploration.
Okay.
Right? And this is why, because here it's so difficult for people to discover what they are really good at right from childhood. Right? As compared to in advanced countries where through school, people are able to learn how to play the instruments, they're able to enjoy different forms of sports. And so naturally, as they grow, they're able to understand and find out what they are really great at. Right? But where we live, it is so difficult. Sometimes because of the economy, your parents are not paying close attention to your skills or the things that they think you are great at, right? And because they are thinking about what you're going to.
Hey, Jesse, come here. Come here. Sit down. Go on.
They are thinking about, I mean, what the food that they need to make, the money they need to make for the family, to raise the family, right? And so sometimes they are not paying that close attention in identifying your gifts and your skills. And so that's why in a place like Ghana, you really actually do need to explore, right? And when you explore, that's what will help you identify where you can fit very well. You know, a lot of people may say that that may lead to maybe it could have some limitations on how early you become successful, right? But I also believe, and in my personal experience, that exploration and all of these little things that I learned along my journey really became like a summary of the kind of person that I became as a creative now.
Wow, that's deep. So you took the opposite step, that despite the fact that the country is almost, I don't want to say the word, but despite the fact that things are not that great, this is the part where you really have to explore. And I definitely resonated with the idea that people are not really allowed to see their full potential or to see what they could become just because of these limitations. For instance, a lot of people starting photography would always head towards shooting weddings and events because they are sure that they are going to get money, and they stay there far too long to even begin to think of what other means or what other industries they could explore. Now, it's quite sad, but at the same time, I think one idea that I wouldn't really call that an idea, but I'll say one strong feeling that I have is that design or art is very experiential. The more experience you can have in life, the richer your artistic expression becomes.
Exactly.
So for somebody who has always been able to dabble in a lot of little things, you've been doing some music, some art, even some science like yourself. You come from a very heavy science background. You're able to sort of incorporate everything. That makes your visual vocabulary a little bit more exciting and more different.
Exactly. And only last week or 2 weeks ago, I spoke at this Indigo Packaging conference, and the title of my presentation was "What Makes a Great Designer," right? And I explore from this exact perspective that you're talking about, and the fact that the diversity, and one of the things I really highlighted was being someone who is very well learned and being a continuous learner and researcher, right? For me, one of the great things about the different things that I do, I mean, I play musical instruments, so about 2 or 3 of them, right? Is the fact that through exploration, I am able to learn a lot more. And so I could easily have a new client. And that's one of the great things about being a designer, right? You get to explore so many industries. Today, you could be designing for someone in the medical field. The following day, you're doing tech. The next day is agriculture. The following day, you're doing something that you have never heard of. Right? And it makes it so exciting, right? The great thing is that if you are well read, if you have explored enough, it is so easy to have conversations with the kind of clients and the kind of people that you meet, right? And for me, I'll say that that's one of the things that makes the biggest difference, because I have clients that we could speak on the phone for about an hour and we're just talking about random regular life stuff, right? And because I know so many things, I know so much about almost a little bit of everything. Like I have worked with a postpartum psychologist, right? And I didn't know anything about postpartum till I worked with her, right? And I learned so much. Right, and so the more you explore as a creative and in the way to finding your journey or finding what you truly want to focus on, you get to learn so many things. And so now I could easily creative direct a photo shoot because I've done photography to a certain extent, and so I understand certain things and nuances that come with like doing photography, right? And so that's where I come from. Anytime I talk about the concept of exploring and how that really like changes or helps your trajectory as an upcoming designer.
Okay, so that's quite insightful. Now, I'm a creative in Ghana. I've explored, right? I've done almost all the things I can, and I say, you know what? I think maybe I want to make films or short videos, or perhaps I want to become a graphic designer. I want to work on branding. I want to tell the stories of brands. I want to design logos.
Yeah.
My point is I've picked a niche, something I think I'm good at, something I know I enjoy to do, and at least something I think I can make enough money on. What next?
That's a very interesting question. I think for everybody, what the next steps you take depends on these three things, and I'll come back to what success looks like, right? What success looks like, and for some people it's commercial success, right? They want to make so much money, right? And so for them that's their focus. I want to make so much money as a designer, and I'm okay with it, right? There are some people it's creative success, right? They want people to acknowledge and know them as one of the greatest designers in Ghana. And that's that person's definition of success, right?
Yeah.
They want to be able to, they want people to look up to them and say, hey, this guy, he's the guy. And that's creative success, right?
Yeah.
And cultural success becomes more of a blend of being able to impact the culture of wherever you come from, right? So if you're Ghanaian, how has your design work influenced your culture, right? Or your way of life, or the way of life of everybody around you? And that becomes someone's definition of success, right? And so the next steps really is up to what success means to you, right? Now, if it is commercial success, then now we want to talk about structure. We want to talk about making sure that you are prepared to be able to get the projects that are the $10,000, the $20,000 and whatnot. And if it is creative success, then you want to make sure that you understand your design space or your creative space so well that you do work and people look at it and they say, yes, this is the guy I want to be like, right? And so that becomes the next step, defining what you as a creative, you think is your next step as a designer.
It makes perfect sense.
Yeah.
You know, it's interesting that you're saying this because I have never had to think of any of these three. But now that you mention it, if I sort of look back at all the things I've done, I think what has really driven me was the creative side of things. And the second, I'll probably put the culture. And I think last, I'll put the money. Up until the last election, I've never really thought a lot about how much money I had to make. How much money I was making had never really been the reason why I said yes or no to a project, but rather what has really influenced my acceptance or decline of a project has really been how creative do I get to do this? I'm a very competitive person, so usually I'm thinking, this thing, if we do like this, it would be cool. Then I want to see how exactly it will look like. So I would accept the project to see if my test or my thoughts or my imagination would actually play out the way it is. So you explore, you pick a niche, and
I'd also like to add, right, not to cut you, is the fact that, I mean, for everybody, these definitions of success, right, is in levels or in stages, right?
Guys, it's okay.
I mean, for me, for a period of time, it was creative success. But up until a certain point, it was commercial success, right? And then later, I start thinking, how am I contributing culturally to the concept of design as a person, right? And so that is why whatever goal that you pick is very dependent on the stage that you are in as a creative, right? Someone wants to begin with creative success because they feel like, if I do so well as a creative and I get more people seeing the type of creative that I am, I'll fetch more money. There are other people who also think that, no, if I'm able to make more money, I can pick the kind of creative projects I want to do, and that's how I become successful creatively, right? And so it's a very interesting journey for every single person. It's very subjective, exactly.
I think you're right. I can also resonate because for me, like I said earlier, it was definitely creative, a little bit of culture. Like I said, until the last election, until the country went to everybody knows, then it had become very commercial influence because almost all the things I wanted to do, even all the things that is in cultural success that you say that I wanted to achieve, I wouldn't be able to do that without the commercial success first. So I think a lot of people watching this video, especially if they're in Ghana, would definitely want to start from the commercial success. And so I think a lot of people watching this video would want to start from the commercial success. I'm sure you know what I'm going to say. One of our longest conversations has always been around the concept of Abraham Maslow's theory of needs, where you have to secure the very basic. We're talking about your accommodation, we're talking about your food, we're talking about your shelter, protection, all these things. For a lot of creators in Ghana, most people are going to be very interested in commercial success because until you've achieved that, it's very difficult for you to sort of go to the next level and start to think of who you are as a creative person, who you are as an artist, who you are in your own inner voice. It's difficult to get to that point. But then again, when I look back 5 years ago, we were in a space where we wouldn't be able to say we had that figured out, right? But you had a very positive outlook on life. And that is even funny because we're in a country where the creative profession that we are both in is not something that's admired. It's not something that's respected. I mean, nobody really expects anybody in the creative industry to become somebody with a huge reputation in society or somebody respected in society. But you had a very optimistic point of view for the future. And I want to know how you were able to cultivate such a behavior.
I think it's two things. The first thing would be reference, right? And when I say reference, the reference is from the previous years, right? Now, 5 years ago, I was also looking 5 years back.
Right.
5 years ago was, say, 2018.
I guess.
Yeah, right. Now, between 2018 and 2013, where was I in 2013? What was I doing, right? And so for me, it has always been a matter of referencing what I was doing some years before and where I am now. And it only creates a better picture of the fact that it's only going to get better, right? Now, one of the books that I read when I was in, I think, late SHS, right, was it late? I think so, was The Compound Effect. Right, and I talk about this book a lot.
Yeah, you talk about
and I also talk about the fact that that's one of the books that really changed my perspective on so many things in life, right? That if I'm going to make my next 1 million Ghana cedis, it's not going to be a cumulative of the monies that I have been making, right? And that it could just be one project that will get me that 1 million Ghana cedis, right? And so all I have to do is make sure that I am working so hard, working very well, being on top of my game so that it leads me on that path, right? And so for me, and I always make this reference that about 15 years ago, when I found PowerPoint because of my brother who was using PowerPoint, and I also wanted to enjoy and see what PowerPoint does, right? And I started exploring PowerPoint. I didn't know that in 2022, a PowerPoint project would earn me as much as $6,000 for one single PowerPoint presentation design, right? And that is a very clear example of how bright the future can be in terms of the skills that we are acquiring, right? And that's PowerPoint. And no project, no skill has ever earned me that much for a single project, like for one single project.
But PowerPoint has.
Just one PowerPoint didn't work, right? And that's what I mean when I always talk about the fact that we can only go higher. Is the fact that all the skills that we are learning, the skills that we are accumulating, will always have a moment where it will come to play. And if we take good advantage of that opportunity or that season, then we will excel. And so it's one of the things that fuels my positivity, right? In the previous year, I mean, how much did I make? Okay, in the previous year, maybe in 2013, I was charging 200 cedis for logo design, right? But in maybe in 2015 or 2018, I was charging maybe 5,000 cedis for logo design, right? It only tells me that it can only go higher. There's absolutely no way it's going to go any lower, right? And it's one of the things that really fuels me.
But that's such a simple, it's such a simple ideology, but it's so powerful. One quote that I really love, and I think you really sort of explained it really well, is it says, do not compare yourself to someone out there who's doing better than you, but compare yourself to who you were yesterday. And the idea to look at your past and use that as inspiration to look to the future, it's a very great thing. And I think in today's world, a lot of people are stuck where they are because they look at what other people are doing.
Exactly.
And they compare themselves a lot to see,
Yeah.
Charlie, look at where this guy is going. This guy is charging so much for his work. This guy is doing this guy is doing that. But meanwhile, you have no idea how long the person has been doing what they're doing.
Yeah.
You have no idea the kind of leverage or resources the person has at their disposal. But truly, what you should have been doing was to look at yourself today
Yeah.
and compare to who you were yesterday
Yes.
to see if you've made an improvement.
And I'll say that for me, the only thing, for me, I live in a bubble of my own, right? Where I am my own benchmark.
I know.
the only thing I will probably ever think about comparing myself to somebody else is how good they have become as designers or as creatives, or whatever new things that they have learned that I can learn from. Right. That's literally the only thing that I would compare myself. And so if I see that, oh, this guy's applying these new ideas and strategy to the design work that they are doing, then that's when I said, well, let me learn from him and see if this is something that I can pick and learn, right? And even that I kind of pick and experiment. And as you know, I'm an extremely experimental person. That's where my passion for exploration comes from. And so for me, I live in the bubble of my own, right? Where I become my own benchmark in how I grow and I do the things that I do. And I would say that really is one of the reasons why, for me, I'd say I'm mostly happy with my journey, and I'm always positive that it will only get better going forward.
Wow. You know, I'm not surprised you're saying this. I've known you for so long, and this is not something that you are just saying. It's something that you live. And sometimes I'm the one who sort of hits that sort of hurdle very quickly, and then I come crawling, come speak to you, and then right after that I feed off that energy, and I'm able to get back on my feet. So we've spoken about exploring who you are, and that sort of gives you the leverage to acquire more insights to pick what you want to do. We've spoken about, after that, being able to sort of pick a niche and find either you're going to look for commercial success, creative success, or cultural success. And now we sort of come back to speak about a very fundamental soft skill, which is self-belief. I believe being able to trust in your own self, to trust that your progress is not dependent on what other people are doing, but what you were doing yesterday. So let's say we're at the point where now you're beginning to make money. Clients are coming through. This could be your friends, this could be your family, or this could be a neighbor or someone in your vicinity or even social media who likes what you're doing. Now, a lot of people are placing themselves as professionals in Ghana. Meanwhile, they are just sort of faking it till you make it. You know, there's a big debate about the whole idea of fake it till you make it. We're not going to go there. But what can young creatives do? Or perhaps any starting creatives, what can creatives do to sort of establish themselves in the public domain so they receive the type of treatment they want from the world?
Okay, so I'll start with very few things, right? And hopefully I remember all the things that I have in my mind. But the first thing, right, that I'll talk about is onboarding, right? And it's an extremely basic skill, or it's an extremely basic thing. And like you know, most of the things I talk about are usually the basics, because those are the things that I practice. I don't practice any complex things, right? It's the basics. It's how you onboard clients. Right, and in my experience over the years, that I have learned from onboarding, makes or breaks any project. How you onboard clients, right? If a client were to pick up a phone and call you, hey, I found your number ABC. I want you to work on a project for me. How you pick things up from there makes a big difference.
Great.
Right? Now onboarding, and I'll use a couple of examples. Those times, when we go to sit at Vidai Cafe sometimes to work, you realize that immediately somebody enters, then one person says something and they all respond. You see that all the waiters or waitresses respond, right? And that's just one. When you enter any popular hotel, there's someone at the entrance who smiles at you, shakes you. And that is why banks use pretty people as tellers, right? Because when you enter, the point of contact has to be warming and welcoming. Right. And so for me, over the years, onboarding has become one of the most important things. How you onboard clients when they reach out to you for a project. How do you deal with that process, right? How are you starting? Are you starting with a phone call to kind of discuss the nature of the project? But for me, and I'll tell you what I do, right?
What do you do?
That works for me, right? For me, I always want to make sure that the client can pay for the service.
Great.
Right? For me, that's like the first thing that I think about. Can the client pay for the service? Right? And so at Third Law, which is my startup, we have designed a very simple document that literally has some of the work that, in fact, no, it has who we are as a company, right? It highlights who we are, some of our services. It also highlights for whatever you are reaching out to us for, it highlights at least our basics or starting packs, right, or packages in terms of amount. It also highlights our approach, how we approach. So if you are hitting us up for branding, that document literally has how we approach branding project, the typical timeline that it takes. Yeah. Everything has been clearly spelled out in that one single document. And it also has some of the work that we have done, right? And so before we take any step further, we have been able to answer a number of questions for you. The first thing is how much the project could cost you. The second thing is which company am I talking to and what do they have to show, right? So because our work is in there. Third thing is to show you, okay, so if I'm to sign with these guys, so if I'm to start this project with these guys, this is literally how it's going to go, right? So I have been able to kind of paint these pictures to whatever clients that is reaching out. Now, once we send you this, right, based on how you're going to respond, is what tells us where we're going to go next. Did you get me? Yes. Based on your response, because already in there are starter packages, right? And that's one could say $1,000 or 5,000 cedis or whatever. And so based on the two initial packages, right? And we also always say that our packages are always customized, and you don't have to really fit within these two, right? Now, if you are not able to afford what's already in there, then clearly we're not the people for you. Exactly, you're not the right fit. For us, one of the key things that we use in judging project is whether you can pay. Right? It's a very simple thing. We don't want to complicate things. We don't want to have to get on a call with you, talk about the project, talk before we come and say, hey, okay, now let's just send you a quote. Great. No, we send you a starter package that makes you know that we will never price below this amount. Are you ready to pay?
Yeah.
Right. And then we take things up from there. And then from there, and I'm still talking about onboarding, right? The next thing that we do is whatever form or medium of communication that works for you or is the easiest for you is how we communicate, right? And so back in the day, we used to send questionnaires to clients for projects and all of that. These days, we don't do questionnaires anymore, especially because for most of the clients, when you ask them to sit down and fill a form or type, we realize that it's difficult, right? Sometimes they are not even able to type whatever they are thinking.
Exactly.
Right? And that's a key onboarding hurdle that you have to be able to cross. Right. And so if I'm able to get them on a phone call, sometimes it's a WhatsApp call, sometimes it's a Zoom call, sometimes it's a Google Meet call. We tell them whichever one you are comfortable with. And that's how onboarding works with us, right? We have to make sure that you're a good fit based on pricing. And I think it's a normal thing, right? And then after pricing, making sure that whichever means, so we are collecting all the information we can collect through a phone call, or whatever is the best means for you. And once we gather the information, right, we'll typically send you an invoice together with a contract in one email, right? You can read the invoice, read the contract with any questions, etc. Get back to us. And then once that is signed off, you make whatever initial deposit that you have to make, right? For us, and I always say that every client comes with a fear, right? To be able to give them a great service, you need to be able to dispel some of the fears that they come with, right? And for us, one of the things that I tell a lot of them is the fact that, especially those who have those level of doubts, is that who asks us questions like, so what if I don't like what you do for me? I always tell them that if you don't enjoy what we're working with us, or you don't enjoy the process that we go through, or the solutions that we offer, we'll give you 100% refund. Right.
Right.
That is how confident we are in the kind of solution or work that we can do for you. And for a lot of people, that's one of the things that makes them relax and say, okay, well, I mean, I could get so. If you say so, exactly.
Have nothing to lose.
Yes. But the truth is that has never happened.
And it will never happen.
And it will never happen, right? Because we will make sure that we will provide you as many solutions as we can provide to get your problem solved. Right.
That's great.
Yes, if we have to do, I mean, to be honest, some people like to charge for number of rivets and stuff like that, and it's fine. I mean, I used to be on that side of the table. These days, I'm no more on that side of the table.
You are by the solution that fit.
Exactly. Yeah, I don't. These days, I don't think about if you do 2 or 3 or 4 rivets, you pay this amount of money. To be honest, these days we don't really care about that, right? We want to make sure that we have solved the problem. The truth is that we have charged you enough for probably more than 5 rivets.
Yeah.
Do you get it? So it's all factored into it, right? And we make sure that, and I'm still talking about, these are things that I'm talking about things that you need to know as a designer that makes you much better to commercially to be able to make the money that you're making, right? And so that's why I'm talking about some of these things. And once we're able to make sure that onboarding is great, one of the things that we also like to really do these days, right, is wrapping up very well.
Finishing.
Yes. It's a,
let me cut you off right here.
Yeah.
Before you even go to the onboarding part, you mentioned something. You said, oh, it's normal, like onboard, like the whole thing you do, like the customer service is normal. As normal as it may seem, I truly believe that it's a very difficult thing for a lot of people.
Yeah.
And especially when it comes to 2 things. First thing, being confident enough to sort of welcome somebody into your business,
yes,
and confident enough to provide a service. A lot of people in Ghana, especially in the creative industry, feel like they are not enough, right? So they overcompensate by doing so many things that complicates the onboarding process.
Yeah.
And they raise the expectations of their clients so high that mid-project, they're already bent out and they are not able to provide the solution that they claim they could be able to provide.
Yeah.
So that's one thing. So you being able to simplify it to such a very basic process where you want the client to be comfortable, it's very profound, and I don't want you to underestimate that particular thing.
True.
We all know how customer service is terrible in Ghana, and for creatives it's ×2.
Yeah.
I mean, our mind works in very weird ways.
Yeah.
So for creatives to be able to sort of champion customer service, especially in the onboarding process very early on, it's not something that should be understated.
True.
Now, the second thing, which talks about the money part, being able to know that, hey, can you afford us? If yes, let's go. If no, there are a lot of people who are not able to do that in the first stage of the process.
True.
And they end up wasting so much time to build a very beautiful deck, to do a lot of storyboarding if you're into filmmaking, or mood board if you're into photography, or any other thing in the creative space, before they even speak about money, because they feel like they're afraid that the client might say it's too much. So they want to provide as much evidence that, I want $5,000 and this is why you have to pay.
Yeah.
And they do all that work. Sometimes it takes them months, weeks, who knows? They send it to the client. The client always loves it, and that's the case. The clients always love it. And they say, but I can't pay for it.
Yeah.
And you're forced to go your separate ways. And you have done all that work for nothing. Or worse, you are forced to compromise and reduce your price because you know you've done all that work and you don't want it to be for nothing.
Yeah.
And I know a very good friend who has a mindset of, instead of getting 0, if I have 1,
it's okay.
It's okay. After all, I spent all that time.
Yeah.
So you being able to sort of put that in the forefront and confidently say, this is how much we charge typically for this type of project. We're not going to go below this project no matter what.
Yeah.
And if you want to go for a ride, let's go. And what you do very well, and I think more even brilliantly after the fact, is you guarantee them. Because like you said, the doubts from the clients could be very, very high.
Yeah.
Especially
And
if
it's
your
valid.
price is high. And it's very valid. I always tell people that it's hard to make money. So when a client decides to pay you for a service, treat them as if it's your last project.
Exactly.
Sometimes I fail on this particular part myself, and I try my best to compensate or to say sorry.
And it's a learning curve,
It's
to be
a
honest.
learning curve.
I mean, for all of us, most of these things that we're saying, sometimes doesn't run as smoothly as sometimes you want it to run, because and it all depends on the kind of client that in certain cases you may be working with. Sometimes things change along the line, right? And I'll probably talk about more of that later, but it happens for most of us. Sometimes there are times that whatever process that you have defined doesn't work the way you were anticipating it to work, right? And then they become breaking projects and stuff like that. But you know, a lot of times it's how you recover from that, right? Because and in the past, maybe about 3 or 4 years ago, there are projects that we were supposed to see through to the end, do it very well, and due to certain things that I was doing, the client was also doing, certain things stretched the project so long that now I got into other projects. I became busy and I wasn't paying so much attention to this project because they were supposed to make certain provisions in the beginning that they didn't do, right? And so I decided not to mind them anymore, right?
Yeah.
But then after a few calls, she was trying to reach me. Later, I just went back and told her that now this is the issue. Right, and it leads me to my other point, communication. Right, and so I went back to her, told her that this is my issue. Right, when we wanted to do this project, this was how open my tab was. Right, and we took on this project. Now, trying to get ABC for us to use for the project took so long that now we have moved on to another project. This is making it difficult to accommodate your project in the timeline again. Right. So I'll be happy to provide every file that we have done for you to try somebody else to continue, because as it stands, I am swamped. And so that is why you are not getting so much of my attention at this point. Right. Now, when I told her this, she understood, right? She said, okay, well, fine, at least you've come clear with me, because the truth is that most designers don't do this. They'll disappear on you, right? And they'll ghost. Yes. And she appreciated like that feedback or that comments that I gave her, that the truth is that right now I can't, because I have to move on to another project.
But Daniel,
right?
Daniel, have you always been like that?
Have I?
Always been like that?
No, no. I mean, and this thing happened like I'll probably say about 3 or 4 years ago, right?
Right.
But maybe about 7, 8 years ago, it wasn't like that, to be honest.
So for you, in the past 3 years, you've really decided to make your communication solid.
Yes.
And was it a deliberate decision or something that just comes naturally to you?
No, it was a deliberate decision, because one of the things, and like I say, I'm an experimental person, right? Okay. I tried it for some time, realizing that if I'm as open as I am with clients, majority of the time they understand.
Okay.
Right? So I tried it out, and I realized that, oh, well, actually this works. Because at the end of the day, they're okay, they get it. But what I made sure of, right, was making sure that I wasn't taking so many projects, or I was refining how I work so well that these things don't have to happen. And the truth is that they would barely happen anymore, right? In this instance, right? Because back then, I mean, you know, when you're starting out, you want to get as many projects as you want, as you can, because Charlie, you don't know where the next cash is coming from, right? And so it had to be a deliberate attempt. I had to deliberately say that no, this time around I'm going to be very more open in how I'm communicating on some of these projects. And I have a strong feeling that it will make me a better creative, right? Or a better creative entrepreneur in most of the projects that I do. You get me?
Right. I think I was a little bit distracted there, right there. Sorry, Twitter. So it's very incredible that you are making conscious decisions when it comes to onboarding, conscious decisions when it comes to really understanding that communication goes a long way to the health of your project. Now we're jumping into one thing. This is something you sort of briefly touched on, and I think it's in the realm of protecting yourself as a creative. Especially, it's not every project that goes smoothly. It's not every client that has your best interest at heart. Some people are just there to exploit you. Some people are there to see if they can make their money do 5 times more work than it's supposed to do. And they look at you from the point of view that, oh, I'm going to give you a chance. I'm going to give you exposure. I'm going to make you earn more. You are lucky to be working with me. Or sometimes they make that crazy promise of, I have 5 more projects in store. You are the one who's going to work on it. I just want to see how this goes. Like, people have an audacity to treat creatives
I have a response for that.
Right, I mean, you get where this question is going with. So how the creatives protect themselves?
So I have a contract for everything, right? And I have a contract for regular design service, one for branding, one for photography, one for web design. I literally have a folder of contracts for every service that we offer. There's a template, right? And so what's going to always change in there is the scope, the amount, the dates. Majority of the time, that's what changes, and then we send it to whichever client that we send it to, right? Now, these days, one of the things is that I've become extremely very flexible with even how I structure payments, right? And it's a conversation that I have with the clients all the time before the start of the project, right? That, okay, this project is going to cost us maybe 30,000 cedis. See, I don't mind you paying us 4,000 cedis every month till we finish the project.
Okay.
Right. So unless you're a first time client, and my gut tells me that no, this project take 60% upfront.
Yeah.
Right. Or based on the nature of project. But these days I've become extremely flexible in how we structure payments. So especially if it is a web project, because I mean, if you don't pay for a certain time, we can just take the site off. Right. So I structure payments in a way that it becomes easier on you so that you can pay.
Yeah.
And all of that is factored into the contract. And we state clearly in that contract that these are the services you are paying for. This is how much these sort of things that we are offering is going to cost. Now, we understand that things can pop up as the project goes. It's very normal. But if things like that pop up, let us agree on the price, and then let's add it and let's invoice it. Do you get it? And so that is actually stated in our contract.
Yeah.
It is very clear right under our table that shows the things that we are charging for. There's a paragraph that says exactly what I'm saying.
Great.
That we understand that projects sometimes scopes can change. Certain things can be added on. But anytime we get to that point, let us agree on quotes and let us add that to our invoice and we'll work on it. And once we state that, then we send you a contract, you sign, we sign. The truth is that there's something interesting about a contract that once the client sees that these people are using a contract, it makes them take you more seriously.
Yeah.
Right? And this is from experience doing projects without contract and doing projects with contract. I realized that the ones that we sign contract, they are more careful, they are more serious about it because they know that there's a binding document between the two of us, right? And that's one of the things that helps you protect yourself as a designer. And for me, this is how I always pitch it to the client. Oh, so we're going to send you a very simple contract. What it's going to do is that it's going to protect you because it's going to commit us to doing the work for you, and it's going to protect us because it's also going to commit you into paying us. And when I say it that way, they appreciate it because now they know that I'm not just thinking about myself, but I'm thinking about them too, right? And that's one of the things that I has been protecting myself and my team. Yeah.
So I think this also sort of points back to a comment you made earlier about assuring your clients that if they don't like the project, they get 100% refund.
Yes.
I think a strong component of your communication skill is to reassure your clients that they are not making the wrong decisions, they're making the right ones.
Yeah.
They are protected, their investment is protected, and at the end of the day, they'll be happy with the work.
Yeah.
And I think it's a very interesting approach because, especially here in Ghana, where it's very difficult for people to pay out money for creative projects. And it's even more difficult for people to pay out huge sums of money for creative projects. So that level of assurance you're given, like you said, through experience, you've known that it works. And I think it's something that a lot of people can learn from. Whether you're a photographer, you're a graphic designer, you're a filmmaker, people are paying you huge sums of money. So you being able to sort of guarantee them a certain level of assurance goes a long way in the confidence they have with you.
Exactly.
And it's very important that you also mentioned the whole idea of having the contract as a binding document to hold each party accountable for anything that happens. A lot of creatives sort of are afraid of the contracts themselves because they know that they are usually complicit to very bad vices, and they are the ones who usually make the projects go down the side and not the client. So sometimes they're a bit apprehensive when someone talks about contracts.
And when you commit yourself to it, then you are also, it forces you to be disciplined. I think it also works in that.
It really does.
Yeah, it forces you to be disciplined because you've signed an agreement with these people, and Charlie, if you mess up, yes, exactly. So I think it also forces you to be more committed to how you are approaching the project.
Right, that's great. So, I mean, up until this point, I assume that whoever's listening, you've backed the client, you've signed the contract, you're doing the product, everything is going on great. Finishing. We spoke very little about finishing, but I think maybe from this point is where we sort of wrap up the conversation, because at this point you sort of come a long way.
Yeah.
You're doing the project, the client is loving the work, whether you're a designer, photographer, filmmaker, I mean, whatever creative field you're in, I think the process works across board.
Exactly.
Now you are closing out. What do you do differently that makes your close out very memorable, very impactful, and promises you sort of continuation in terms of clientele and business?
So wrapping up is also one of the things that, so I always say that you have to wrap up memorably, right? And for us, that there are a number of things that I do and also do with my team, is creating a Google Drive repository. Like I say, the things are simple, but the truth is that they make so much difference in the life of the clients. Okay. Now we have a Google Drive, right? Now in our Drive, once we start the project, we create a folder for you. It has every single thing that we will use in the project, right? Source files. It literally has everything that we're going to use for the project. It's a branding project. You're going to see folders that has the logo folder with different versions, call cards, editable versions. We literally provide you like editable versions of everything in well grouped folders, right? And you have a folder. And one of the things that we say is that this folder will sit with us for as long as you can. As long as you will do whatever you want to do, right? And so it's a lifetime folder, right? And so 20 years down the line, you can still come back to that folder and find whatever files that you're looking for.
As long as Google Drive exists.
Exactly. As long as Google Drive exists, it will exist, right? If it will shut down, it will be because of Google Drive. Google decides to shut down, right? But it will exist forever. For a few people that we have done this with, they have been very grateful for that, because sometimes we are there, they will receive an email is trying to request access, and the client says, oh, I have some designer or prince guy, I'm trying to let him work on this. He says he needs access, and then we approve for them, right? We try to keep that level of check because we want to make sure that their files are not getting into the wrong hands. Right, and so it's one of the things that we do to make sure that at the end of the project they are not now scrambling and trying to find their files and stuff like that. And for a lot of people, it's really great value, as simple as it is. Right, now the other thing that we have actually started implementing, right, not so long ago, is a feedback system. Okay. Right. To actually collect feedback. So we designed a form, and we designed a form where once we are wrapping up the project, we send it to you and we say, well, tell us what you think, rate us, communication, this, that. And then you get to fill that form, and then you rate us and say, sorry, I think you did well here. And then we look at it and then we evaluate that experience. Do you get it? To see how well we performed on the project, right? And we ask that you write us a testimonial. So, I mean, in our new website we're going to be building, we're going to be featuring most of these testimonials that these clients have given. And there's a good opportunity for you to collect testimonials, because that's what other clients will also look at and say that, well, okay, this person said ABC about you, so I think that you'll be great, right? That's one of the things that we have started implementing, and we've already started collecting some testimonials and feedback from some of the clients, and it's a good way to also wrap up a project, right? And now, aside that, one of the things that we also look at is how to make sure that whatever we have created can continue to exist for you, right? And so there are certain clients that in the course of the project, we had a conversation to find out. So after what we have done for you, are you going to be working with any other designers or not? So one of the things that we're doing, and in fact, this one is actually pretty new. It's something that, and this is why it came about, because in the course of the project these days, one of the things that we do closely is documenting and writing down how the process is going so that we can learn from it, right? Now, what we're going to be doing is creating things like Canva templates for some of the projects that we are working on, right? Because based on the conversation with the clients, there was one project that we worked on that the client said, oh, so I'm familiar with Canva, right? And so I think that for ABC, I can be doing them myself post-project, because it was a conversation that I had with them. What is your plan for continuity? It was a very important question that I asked at the end of the project. And they said, well, I'm familiar with Canva, so I think if I'm able to get ABC, I think that I'll be able to continue via Canva. Yes, and so we provided certain types of backgrounds and all of those things, layout options and stuff, and then we shipped as part of the and this wasn't even something that they paid for, right? But it was just part of things that we did to wrap up memorably, and then we shared with her. Brilliant. And she was so excited. She said like she hasn't worked with any designer who thinks like that. And for us, that was like a huge plus, right? We created things for her in such a way that she could easily just pick them up and use them in Canva to create that continuity she wanted, right? And aside that, there are even people that after we have finished everything, they look at it and say, will you guys be willing to offer this service as an additional service? Right? And that also helps us as a business, right? Because then we get to upsell and sell another service to you, and then we move on from there.
It's very interesting that you say this, because I do the Canva thing as well. Where we build every single thing we've done on Canva. I really believe that when you really challenge your fears, and in this context, fear usually is you're afraid if you give them everything, they're not coming back. So most designers or most creators will sort of set little traps for clients, so they'll always have to return and come back so you can get more money off them. I've come to believe that when I challenge that fear and provided as much content possible so they will never come back, that is when they came back the most.
Exactly. That has been my experience too, right? Like for us, we give you every single source file, and then because you even have access to the folder, we created everything in, right? We literally give you everything: fonts, PSD files, Illustrator file. We literally give you everything. But the truth is that they always come back to us for something else.
So one thing that I recently started was, in speaking about continuity, one very solid document every client gets at the end of the project is a brand guide. This sort of explains how the brand is supposed to live and breathe. And it helps other designers adapt their skill set to suit that brand. I noticed another thing about the brand guide, and this is very similar to the issue we all have with questionnaires. Most clients find it very difficult to interpret the brand guide, and most clients, after they do, find it difficult to pass on that knowledge to the rest of the team. So something that I also started doing was making a video folder, a video that accompanies the brand guide. So I do a screen recording and I go through the entire document from page 1 to page 75, page 100, depending on how comprehensive the brand guide is. And I walked through every single thing. And now the first client I did it for was just blown away, because they didn't have to go back and explain it to his team and the new intern who's coming in and the new NSS person who's coming in.
I definitely need to learn that.
And once I did that, it was once. Because prior to that, they'll always come back, but Josh, on page 76, you said this. On page 85, we didn't understand this. And the person I told to could either leave the company, travel abroad, fall sick, and not be around to explain. So this video brand guide has become very monumental in the lives of my clients. And it was just with the same mindset that you have, to make things so easy for them that you like, it's like you're sucking them. Don't come back. I'm giving you
everything that you need.
But then it has made, in about just a span of about a year, this client has brought me about 3 extra clients just because of this one little addition. And for me, I loved it because I like making videos. So it's just a no-brainer, right? It's so incredible.
It's true. And even for me, the client that I took through that process also did refer someone to us, right, to work on a project with them. And for a design business, like that literally is your goal, to make sure that you are doing so well that clients are referring you, because sometimes you don't have the structure, you don't have a sales team to go out and bring in business, and so you rely heavily on referrals, right? So you have to make sure that you have wrapped up so memorably and so well that they are the ones who keep bringing in more people, right? But one of the things that in between the onboarding and the wrapping up, I'd like to add in between, right, is execution, right? Making sure that you're executing the project itself really well and staying proactive.
Right.
There are projects that we have received that when we've got the project and the client said, please, I want you to work on this for me. In fact, they didn't even share with us like a logo, right? So they had the logo they showed was a PNG file of the logo, right? When we got the logo, we recreated everything in Illustrator, made sure it was high res, sharp, clean, redid everything for them, exported it in all the file formats that naturally you would export your logo in. And this, before we used it to create whatever we created for them, right? Now, at the end of the day, they came back to us to ask for their logo files, but we didn't even design their logo, right? But we made sure that we had recreated everything for them in a way that it was so good that when they were working on other touch points for the project, they reached out to us that, oh, can you share the logo files that you created so that we share with other people, right? And that's an example of proactiveness, right? And also making sure that you are providing value that is so great for the client that they think about you more often, right? And want to keep coming back to you. And doing that alone, like, was so helpful to them. At the end of the day, they felt like, oh, we came into this project, we came with our logo in a very bad format, and we ended up going with versions that were so much better and can easily be used for whatever we want to use, right?
I feel like I'm always going to talk about quotes because everything you say reminds me of a quote. Now, what you just said reminds me of, I think it was a quote by, in fact, I'm not going to try and mention the person because I really don't remember, but the quote said, if you do more than you are paid to do, very soon you'll be paid way more than you are supposed to do. And it sort of touches on the point of really bringing value to your clients. Now that brings me to my next question, because what you just did there is an act of excellence. It's a mindset of excellence. So what's your ethos? Like, what drives you? And before you even answer, a lot of people sort of use the money to sort of decide the level of excellence they approach a project with. If you're paying me $1,000 to work on a brand project, obviously you don't expect me to be that serious about it because it's little. But if you're paying me $5,000, then I get all my guns out. Then it's God. What governs your process?
Well, the truth is that we don't take projects if we're not going to give it our all. Like, I don't work on a project if I'm not going to give it my all, right? If the project will look and feel like a project that I didn't give my all, then it will most likely be because the client wanted it that way.
Okay.
That's one I can 100% assure you. We will never take a project and not give it our maximum best. Like, it doesn't happen because, and you know, the truth is that there are projects that I have taken that we didn't even take because of the money. Because it was something that we haven't worked on before. And it was very fascinating. So I told the client that, see, this project, the truth is that whatever amount that I'm even mentioning, right, it's way below what we would typically charge. And you can see from the deck I sent to you that this is like way below the amount that we typically charge. But it's an interesting project. We've never done anything like this before. So we'll be happy to do it, right, at this fee. Right, and we work on it, but excellence is like, it's prime. We always, and for you, something I always tell you, right, that it's prime. The work has to be excellent. It has to, any work that leaves, I tell my team, right, that any work that leaves our camp, it must go in a way that people say that, yes, this thing was touched by Danny.
This is dope.
Exactly, like, and so far, it's so evident because these days there are so many projects that pass through Third Law that I'm not directly involved in the design, and I'm just like the quality check person, making sure that so sometimes there are work that I'll put rulers and things, making sure that they've done alignment and all of those things. Quality checking to make sure that like it is top notch. Or they will send work and I say, nah, this one doesn't meet standard. Go and redo it. Do you get it? Because once it is leaving our camp, it has to be excellent. It has to look really good. If it won't look the way I want it to look, you will probably never see it. Or two, it was because of the client's influence. And the truth is that you're a consultant. You can only direct the client towards a certain goal. But if they want a certain way, you don't love their business more than they do. Right? They may have their reasons for why they want it that way. So you just have to conform and do it. And so for me, My values, and I've talked about this thing so often, but one of my key values really is experimentation. Like, it's a big value, personal value for me. And I believe that every single creative or every single person should have their values. And I tell you this a lot. I tell my creative team a lot, the people that I work with a lot, that you need to have values because you need to be guided by certain principles. Right, and excellence is definitely one of them, but exploration is also a very key part of it, because sometimes the more you explore, the better you get at becoming excellent at what you do. Right, so excellence and making sure that you are developing or bringing out an output that is really solving the client's problem, making sure that your ego is not overshadowing the project. Right, because a lot of creators, we have that personal ego where we think, oh, me, I know it all, I've done it for so long, so I can tell you that let's do it this way. The truth is that sometimes it is true, but like I said before, you don't love the project more than the client does. They love it, but just that sometimes
plus they're paying for it.
Yes, plus they're paying for it. You know, yes, they are spending their money to pay for it, and so sometimes I always say that you have to back. And so my team, we talk about rationale so much. You do work and I'm asking you questions like, what's the rationale behind what you did, right? If it is purely aesthetic, fine. But even aesthetic has a reasoning behind aesthetic. You need to tell me why, right? And that's the only way you can defend it to the client, for them to understand that is why I did it this way, and so accept what I've said.
Okay.
Do you get it? And so, in acting as a consultant, and those are part of like the values or the ethos that you're talking about, making sure that your ego is not overshadowing the project, making sure that you are experimenting and exploring, because sometimes you need to show the clients more options. These days, I think that these days, and people used to say, oh no, me, when I do it this way and I send it to you, accept it. But these days, even when clients reach out to us that they want flyers, majority of the time we'll definitely do more than one sample for them to see, because sometimes it's good to explore and see what the alternatives are out there, right? So we always like to show options for almost every work that we do, that we are submitting to a client, right? Unless it's a 100-page document, and we can't do options for that. But even that one, you may probably get different options for the cover. Right, but we like to show options. So exploration is part, excellence is part, but making sure that you don't have your ego is not overshadowing the project is also like a key part. And then the fourth thing that I will see is making sure you have rationale backing the choices that you are making, and you're explaining it to the client the way they will understand, so that they can make their decisions too.
Wow. I think the conversation has just transcended to a level that goes beyond technique, a level that goes beyond just the work itself. I think because designers, because creatives are artists at heart, they are often very attached to their work. Most of the time, the entire experience of the service is around the quality of the work you're going to get, and not the quality of experience you're going to get throughout the process. And I always tell people that what you're being paid to do does not end at the specific item or deliverable, but the entire experience is part of the client's journey. So it's interesting how I've come to understand that the way you approach your business is all encompassing. It's very fluid, it's very dynamic, and most of all, it sounds enjoyable.
You know, you have to be a people person to be able to do design as a business, right? And you have to learn it. I wasn't always like this, like a people person like I am now, right? Even now, I'm still learning, right? I'm still learning. I'm just that type of person who likes to be happy and enjoy the things that I want to enjoy, right? And it translates into how I relate to most of the people that I work with. But the truth is that you have to be a people person. Professionalism doesn't mean that you have to be serious. Okay, client calls you and serious voice, and it's one of the things I like about you, because you have so much fun when you're chatting with clients on the phone. One of the things I really admire, right? You have to be a people person to build a good design business in Ghana. That's the honest truth.
To be very honest, a lot of people don't see it, but it's actually a secret weapon. Because if you're a people person, if you're able to sort of break that barrier of stiffness, especially, like most of our clients are from the corporate industry, right? As much as we are in the creative industry, we don't get to work with as much creative people like we do with professional people.
Yes.
And typically they are swarmed with strict rules, everything being black and white. So when they get to speak with me, I always try to sort of break that barrier.
Exactly.
And to be very honest, although I would not recommend it, it has actually gotten me out of so much trouble. Like I've done so many bad things that because I got them to that level of comfortability, they let it go.
Exactly. They would easily forgive you for certain mistakes when you relate with them so well as a human being. Let me put it in that context, right? Now, I have a client, we work on projects on and off, right? That sometimes she just wants to chat.
Yeah.
You get it? And these days with me and my team, we actually don't work on weekends, right? And it's a very important thing that I would also advise creatives. I'm not saying don't work on weekends. I'm saying that take breaks, relax, rest, because it's very important for us. We make sure that Saturday, Sunday, no work. Right? Now, this client can call me on Monday morning and say, Danny, I really wanted to call you on Saturday, but I know that these days you don't work on weekends, but I really wanted to discuss this thing with you. And it feels good, right? That the person wants to speak with you about certain things that they are thinking or certain things that they want to implement in their businesses, right? And it's very important that you're a people person in a creative business. And everything can be learned, right? You need to learn it. You need to learn how to have conversations with clients. You need to take your time, read about it. How do I even start my meetings? You have to be extremely intentional and deliberate about those things, right? Especially when you're a freelancer and you are a single person. Even the kind of energy you put into how you pick the calls alone, right? There are people that I hadn't even spoken to them before. They called me, and when they called me, hello, how are you? And they were surprised. It was so funny. They were surprised. She was saying that, hey, I like how you respond to
the phone call.
Yeah, I like how you respond to a phone call. Why? What's going on? And I said, oh, nothing. He said, and she was asking me, why have you received some good news today? And I said, oh no.
Drop your account.
And I said, oh, it's a normal way. I said, wow, I find it very surprising.
I like your energy.
Yes, he said, I like your energy, because when she called, the first time I said, oh, hello, my name is, how are you? And I said, I'm feeling amazing today. How are you too? And that alone,
cheers her up.
Yeah, cheered her up. She was surprised. And it became a very interesting conversation. We had a very long conversation, and we ended up working on the project with them. You get it? So you have to be a people person. You have to exude positive energy. Right? And make sure that, and so for days that I'm not feeling like myself, which barely happens, but for days that I'm not really up to being energetic and all of that, I'll probably postpone the meeting.
Yeah.
Do you get it? Because I need to come with the energy that will make everybody feel great and feel good about themselves. And it's like one of the biggest things that I would advise for a lot of creatives.
So Daniel, as we wrap up, right now we've sort of gone through almost like an entire journey of what creatives could do, starting from exploring fields and picking up a good niche that they enjoy, and being able to learn some really good values, and building a good way to onboard and also to wrap up projects, and also learning some very key soft skills, having a good communication skill, being able to enjoy what you do so you can approach the work with that same energy. And now that we're wrapping up, I have one last question for you. I want you to imagine you stand in front of a crowd. You're done with your presentation. Everything is going down. Everyone is looking at you, right? And most of the audience are people who are starting out, people who have lost hope in this field, people who have done it for so many years and feel like they're stuck, they've hit a plateau, they can't go to the next level, or people who are looking to start afresh, start over, or even get into the field. What is the one thing based on your entire career that you can tell them that will not only encourage them, but will help them have a more positive view of this industry?
It's a very interesting and very profound question, but I'll say two things to people like that, right? The first thing is just start. Okay. I mean, really, I didn't have the picture of where I'll be now in sight, right?
Yeah.
Almost all the money I've made, all the things that I have bought, all the stuff I own, the property I own, whatever I own now is through design. Really, I didn't do anything. I studied physics in school. Most of everything I have made is through design, right? But I didn't think that this was where it was going to get me to be very honest with you. So just start. Nobody has the perfect roadmap, right? But just start. And then the second thing I'll say is that join a community. And when I say join a community, I'm talking about friends who are in the same field, people that you have seen do these things. And well, and for me, community played a very key role. I mean, it's arts-minded. That was really where a lot of us really learned so much about design in particular, right? And so first, just start somewhere and you figure it out. The truth is that once you start, there are so many things that will become very clear to you, right? The second thing is join a community, find a community of friends who you can bounce off ideas with, exchange thoughts with. If you're now getting into the field, find a community. Dex is a typical example of a community, right? Find people in Dex, talk to them about what you're trying to do. And you get some great advice as well, right? And the third thing, that will be the final thing, is don't stop learning, right? For me, you will still find me watching videos and tutorials on logo design and branding and stuff like that. It's a continuous journey, right? Don't stop learning. Once you start and you find a community and you're constantly learning, I can assure you that you'll be fine. You'll get there.
I guess you said it well. You will be fine. And I think, like you always say, maintaining a positive outlook on the future it's a key skill that I think everybody should develop. So Daniel, it's been awesome. It's been great. It's been amazing.
It has.
It's been all the words that are positive and feel like you. I mean, there's another thing that we will do, something very similar to this, but I think on a much higher level. I'll teach it to you so everybody can sort of have their, it's gonna come. But I've loved this conversation.
Same here.
I know there's a lot we could have spoken on.
Definitely.
We could have gone much, much, much deeper. But I'm sure by now we've spoken over an hour and this video is going to become so long for people to actually watch. I mean, I think it's the perfect video, the perfect way to sort of crown the last one that happened 5 years ago.
Yes.
And I think it's been great. So thank everybody if you've actually stuck around to this time. Not those who paused and skipped to the ending, but those who actually watched every single minute of it. You're the reason why I'm doing this. This is day 7 of my 31-day content creation challenge, and I'll see you tomorrow.